Hello everyone, welcome back to another tutorial video. This video is part of the Rhino to CNC fabrication workflow series. Now today, we're going to focus on how to generate a terrain model in Rhino with Grasshopper, which you can use for CNC later on. Now we have a DWG here. Let's begin by typing Grasshopper. And with the Grasshopper open, you're going to use 3 battery today. The first one will be curve. Now, if we press the space bar and then just type in curve and press enter and select the battery that you see here. And the next battery we're going to use is control point, which is this icon that I'm showing on the screen. And the third one is Delaunay mesh. We're going to connect these 3 batteries together. Now, just put all of them in one line and we're going to connect them together. Just show in here. Alright, now the next thing we're going to do is we go to the curve battery. We're going to right click and select the option for set multiple curves. This will allow us to select all the contour lines inside the Rhino interface. And now let's just select all the contour lines, press enter. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to the second battery. On top of the point, right click and select the option flatten. Now let's go to the last battery, which is going to right click and choose the option bake. And here we can select the layer that we want to bake the object to. Basically, that's where we're going to export this Grasshopper model information into Rhino. Now I'm just going to select the default layer and press OK. And then I'm just going to choose the option of bake invalid object and press OK. Now at this point, we can close Grasshopper and jump back into Rhino. So if we go to the render view, we can see that now we have already generated a contour surface. Now let's just hide the contour line and see it clearly. So the next thing we're going to do is going to turn it into a solid closed poly surface. So we're going to go to the shaded view and we're going to double click to exit the perspective, go to top view. And we'll be using a command called drape. Now before that, we're going to make a rectangular surface. So we're going to first draw a rectangle. Now, double click, we want to make sure that this rectangle is below the mesh. And we can just drag this rectangle surface up a little bit. And we can delete this line of rectangle that we've drawn. And now let's go back to the top view and type in the command drape. In here, there's a setting. The most important one is spacing. Now, the smaller the value of the spacing means more detail and more refined the mesh will be generated. Now, for the most detailed option, you can choose the spacing around 1, or you can go up to 2 to 3 for something slightly more rough. Today, we're going to choose 1. And now, after select that, we're just going to drag the area over the entire thing. And then we're going to let the computer process for a bit. And if we exit the top view, go to perspective, we can see that we have generated a poly surface, well, a mesh surface, I should say, that is closer to a closed poly surface that we will generate in the future. That's the first step. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to first trim this. Now, if we go to the area selection layer, turn it on, there is the red line that was in part of the DWG that we can help to trim this contour. If there isn't one, you can just draw one yourself and use the command trim and then select the surface, and it will help us to trim the size that we need. And now we can delete this rectangular surface. We can hide the area selection layer and we can also hide the top red contour mesh. Select it and type in hide. And now, sometimes we can see that the contour model generated in Grasshopper might have an error where it creates like a deep hole inside here, which shouldn't be existing. Now, what we're going to do is just select this Rhino model and type in points on. This will turn on all the control points that we can manipulate this layer in the contour mesh. And we can just zoom in the point of the hole that it created. Select those points, and then we can just roughly drag them back to the surface. If you wanted more detail, you can use the move command to move to a particular surface on a point. But today, we just make things quick to show you the idea of how the workflow works. And then after we do that, we can now turn off the points by typing points off. Now, the next step is to extrude this curve. How we do that? We're going to select the surface, type in extrude surface, and now just drag it into roughly depth, which is going to trim it later. So I might just go for about that much deep to make sure that I can trim off a solid mass in the center. It might take a few seconds for it to run. And now, once it runs, we can just hide the original mesh. And then, okay. Now, we can select that. What we can see is we have generated a closed poly surface. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we'll use the Boolean difference command with a box to trim out the bottom part of this poly surface. There are different ways that you can use to trim. Personally, I just like to use Boolean difference because it just, for me, it's an easier and quicker way. Now, make sure the box you created is quite large, that covers the entire bottom that you want to trim. Select this box. And now, if we just drag it down. Now, select the poly surface, type in Boolean difference, and select the box. And now we can see that we have trimmed the bottom edges. If we go to the render view, you can see that we have successfully generated a closed poly surface, the terrain model using both Grasshopper, and make some cleanup inside Rhino. And now, please follow part 2 of the Rhino to CNC tutorial to see how we can turn this contour terrain into a CNC file prep. Now, thank you very much for watching this tutorial video, and please stay in tune for more in the future.